It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando,
And I'm Mary Yerina.
and this is It's Movie Time. Time for another chick flick, I think.
We've been on a roll.
Mack and Rita, starring the indomitable Annie Hall, otherwise known as...
Diane Keaton.
Okay, so let me start out by asking you, Mary, we usually wait to the end, but your general feel for this movie.
I was underwhelmed.
And I thought it was the worst movie of the year. So I think
I'm trying to be a little more
I know you are, and
correct.
you're perfect. And but now and then, because we usually select movies that we think we're gonna like,
Yes.
and usually we have pretty good taste. We have a good sense of it. And this time I selected it because I want to give Diane Keaton a break, because I have not been favorable to her probably since The Godfather.
That's a long time.
I know it is. I think she did something with Jack Nicholson that was pretty good.
Well, and I think she also, after The Godfather, won an Academy Award for Best Actress for Annie Hall. So
That's right. Let me
you've
reverse
missed a
that.
lot.
No, you're absolutely right. I've got my time not surprisingly confused. Yes, after Annie Hall, yes, and which she did win an Oscar, and for which she has been resting on her laurels for one long time. All right, Mary, help our audience. What's Mack and Rita about?
Well, this is the latest in a long line of age-swapping films.
Good
in this
one.
case, Mack is a 30-something young woman who was raised by her grandmother, and her values and personality lend itself more towards that generation, because she really loved and admired her grandmother and her grandmother's zest for life. And she doesn't really quite fit in with her 30-something friends.
You're right. She's a good example of what they call the old soul.
Old soul.
Yeah.
And through a weird turn of events at a bachelorette weekend trip in Palm Springs, she becomes her 70-year-old self, advancing 40 years in life.
I love the gizmo. It's like an old tanning bed.
It's an old tanning bag.
Yes. Played by, I thought, what's his name?
Simon Luca is the guru who runs this
Yes, Simon Rex.
regressive experience.
Right, yes. I thought he was great. I wish they could have used him more. I know he appears again, but...
Yeah, he's one, and actually this is a very, in terms of being a chick flick, it's a very female character dominated film. Luca and the neighbor to Mack / Rita, Jack,
cutie pie,
are the only men who really have any lines. And in fact, when we were leaving the movies, a friend of mine who I'd seen it with, we were commenting on that, and the groom of the bride, who is Mack's best friend, you only see him on camera like for 2 very short scenes, and my friend Beth commented that the dog had more lines than the groom.
Yes.
So it's very female dominated.
Yes, Jack is played by Dustin Milligan, who I thought had promise. He certainly is a cutie pie.
He is very attractive, and he has promise, but I don't know whether it was his acting or the direction, but I found it fell a little flat, and that role or that performance probably could have been in a Hallmark or Lifetime made-for-television movie.
It was. I mean, what a setup. He comes into the 70-year-old and probably suspects there's a little bit of the 30-year-old there. But right, I mean, how do you know? He doesn't know. And everything is whimsically for showcasing our Annie Hall. Ditzy.
Yeah, and I kind of thought it was an over-the-top performance, and a lot of the histrionics that she employs, she used in several scenes in Baby Boom.
Okay.
And so it really, to me, was a recycled performance to a certain extent.
She's even recycling her belts. Mary.
She is a vintage clothing fan.
Oh my God.
And has that aesthetic of wearing the wide, tight belts with, A-line type coats and skirts.
Oh my God. and
She,
polka dots.
she apparently got to consult on the vintage clothing for her role in
Well,
this
she
film.
did.
And as a producer of the film,
How, all right.
she earned that right.
Yeah, yeah. To me, I couldn't help but think of Harold and Maude. Did you ever see Harold and Maude?
A long time
right.
ago.
So you remember Bud Cort plays the 19-year-old who
Right.
falls in love.
With Maud, the
Yes.
70-year-old.
And so 19-year-old, 70-year-old, that's pretty outrageous. Actually, she's turning 80.
80,
Yeah.
that's right.
And Maud is turning 80, and she's about ready to off herself because she figures that's enough time. Ruth Gordon plays
Yeah,
that
I
part.
remember Ruth played the role.
And it's just constellations apart as far as wit goes. I can remember half a dozen lines from Harold and Maude. I can't remember a darn line from this movie.
Yeah, I would say there were a few lines that were funny, especially for women of a certain age.
Yes.
And that was somewhat of a refreshing premise
Yes.
for this film, because most age swap films do not have someone going from their younger self to their senior citizen self. They usually advance more to their prime of life, like in their 30s or 40s, like Tom Hanks in Big.
Yes. Big's a great example of this.
Big
swapping.
is a great example of this, and unfortunately, the few funny lines weren't even memorable.
No.
In the midst of what was a pretty mediocre film. I actually had to resist the urge to check my watch to see, like,
Yeah.
this is an hour and 35-minute film, and are we close to being done yet?
You know, I had
So that's a bad sign.
Well, I had the same thought. This is interminable, but it's just by comparison with current films, it was short.
It was short,
Yeah.
mercifully so.
How did your friends react?
They felt the same way. They're two women about my age,
Uh-huh.
and they both were like, eh.
How about the Golden Girls segment of this? Did you think that worked?
No, I did not. And part of it was I found the script and or the editing to be very abrupt, and so I didn't feel like there was a lot of natural flow to the dialogue at all. And so a lot of what the senior group of women who become kind of the fairy godmothers to Rita and Mack are advising was kind of a little bit cliche and abrupt, and
Yes.
and I loved all of the actresses who were in that
Yes.
group, especially, and shout out to Ohio Wesleyan alum Wendy Malick.
Now, which one is she?
She's the tall, thin one
Oh,
with the
and
short
she's
hair.
great.
She's great.
I mean, and she looks great.
She does look great. But
So that's Wendy?
Wendy Malick.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
local.
I believe so. I
Oh,
understand
excellent,
she's an
excellent.
Ohio Wesleyan alum.
Yeah, all right, well, good, and I agree with you. She was a standout amongst these. So, and just by reason of her reactions and the way she carried herself, because you are so correct, there is not a line any one of them is given to let them stand out.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate because, like I said, I did like the premise. I liked the focus on women, especially older women who do not get their due in Hollywood.
Boy, you think?
And it's just unfortunate that this didn't live up to
Yeah.
the premise, because it had so much promise to do so.
Oh, and when you think that of how iconic Diane Keaton is, and how that she still has such power that she can have a movie centered around herself. I think she must be 76 by now.
She's 75,
Oh,
and
she
she's been a social media sensation herself, and this film employs that line of work to be an influencer on social media. She is one of the models for the coastal grandmother trend on social media, and so it's a little bit of a play on that her character explores that aspect as well. But again, it's an over-the-top performance. It's not memorable, and I don't know if I'd say it's the worst movie I've seen of the year, but it's
Well,
certainly not the best.
We're at the halfway point. And so far for me, it is. And I thought to myself, I asked Mary to do this, but I really, sincerely, first of all, I wanted a comedy. Secondly, seeing this premise, I thought it's really interesting how all of us, even though I've passed the mark, but all of us would love to know what we're going to be like. You know, for yourself, it'd be about 30 years. For me, I'm there, past. And so now I know what it was like. But certainly at 30 years old, I would have really died to know what it might have been like for me at 70, just instantly. So yeah, so I like the premise. You know, I think Rod Serling would have had a good time.
This was, your point is well taken. This was probably more suited to episodic or made-for-television
Right.
movie than big theatrical release.
All right, Mary Rena. The movie is Mack and Rita. What do you advise our audience? This is a tough one now.
This is a tough one. I would say if you really want to see it, wait for it to come to streaming.
And that's good advice. Look, there's something to be said for going to the theater.
There is.
There is. It is beautiful, and as you went with your friends, and I always go with my friends, and no matter what the movie, we always have a good time.
That is true.
Very few other people. How many people in your theater, did you think?
Oh, probably less than 10.
Yeah.
And they were all women of a certain age.
They were. All right. Mack and Rita. Stay here. You don't have to go to be 70 to appreciate it.